This is the RACER H2O Podcast.
It's time to drop that flag!
Go! Come on. Right here, go get him! Cut it tight. Be on the tractor, baby! Bring it home!
And now here's your host.
Rewind battle for the lead, shoulder to shoulder, going into turn one. Rips that boot around!
Jared Rosberg.
Yeah, what's up, troops? It's your old pal, Jared. No, do not adjust your earbuds. There is nothing wrong with your transmitting device. This is indeed the second half of the doubleheader for RACER H2O Podcast. The podcast so nice, we had to do it twice. Coming up on the second half of this doubleheader for the RACER H2O Podcast this week, Rick Miller, co-promoter of the NBRA's racing Thunder on Wolf Creek this past weekend in Grove, Oklahoma. We'll catch up with him, get his comments about the race, learn more about how the hydros are working and how the local club racing is working during this weird time of COVID-19. He's on his lunch break, fans. We don't have much time. We'll talk with Rick Miller when we come back to the RACER H2O Podcast in 15 seconds.
Get up-to-the-minute watercraft racing news and fantastic bonus content by joining RACER H2O on social media.
Links to our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube pages are easy to find at racerh2o.com.
This is the RACER H2O Podcast.
All right, so for the second half of this week's podcast, fans, we're joined by Rick Miller. He is the co-promoter of this past weekend's Thunder on Wolf Creek. Rick, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Well, I tell you, you got to wear. I wanted to give you a couple days to recover from this past weekend because you both race at and promote this event in Grove, Oklahoma, correct?
I do, and my dad, Leonard Miller, does really all the pre-race promotion. He goes out and gets the the safety people lined up. We kind of had this event along with another event in our town the Chamber of Commerce put on called Toes in the Grand. And they had all kinds of bands, fiddle contests, car show, fireworks, helicopter rides, and we were part of that. And so normally we do a little more promotion, advertising, but they were able to do that. But we still have to get all the logistics of our lake patrol, permits, insurance, sound system, set the buoys out, just all those kind of logistics, ambulance before the race. And so my dad does all that stuff. And then kind of once race day hits, then I kind of lead the drivers meeting and I get the classes lined out and the schedule and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, it's kind of a team event, and it works out really well. Well, again, I'm glad that I gave you a little bit of time. I don't think you would have been too happy to talk to me on a Sunday evening, would you? Hey, I tell you what, I was out at that lake from 7 a.m. to dark, I think, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I had a busy work week leading up to that, and I think I'm suffering a little bit of sunburn, but it was a great event. It was so well attended just because it was the first stock modified outboard race that we had in the United States. Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about the details of the event. And one thing I found unique about this is actually put on by two different sanctioning bodies, which is, I got to tell you, and everything else we deal with, it seems like it's the APBA or the highway. This was not the APBA. This is two separate sanctioning bodies working together to put an event on. The Oklahoma Boat Racing Association, OBRA, and the NBRA, the National Boat Racing Association, of which you are a card-carrying member. I know that I mentioned in some of the promos, it's Rick Miller from the NBRA. You're not an officer, but you're a card-carrying member. So, but tell me a little bit about working with two different sanctioning bodies, how that all came about, and why do it that way? Why not just fly under one flag? Well, actually, we do. Technically, the National Boat Racing Association is the main headquarter organization, and then there are local clubs that are part of the NBRA. So there's like the Louisiana Outboard Organization. There's the Outboard Drivers Association, which is around St. Louis, and the OBRA, which is Oklahoma. That's just an example of a few. So we're really part of that. But really, you bring up a great point, because we also race with APBA, and we had a lot of APBA members come down. So although the NBRA organized it, was the sanctioning body, we had a lot of them come down, and a lot of them have never raced with us before. And they had a great time and enjoyed it. We had to accommodate some of their different classes. We have rules that we can do what we call a special event. So, like, we don't run our novice classes for kids. They have the J class or junior class. So we kind of had to do a separate deal for that. But we mixed some other classes together just to get everybody on the water. We said, if you bring a boat, we'll find a place for you and we'll let you run. And it worked out just really good. But again, the OBRA and the NBRA work together all the time. But yet, that was as big of APBA and NBRA event of members, combined together that I've seen in a long time.
Well, I'm speaking with Rick Miller, who was the co-race promoter of this past weekend's hydro race in Grove, Oklahoma. Thunder on Wolf Creek. And Rick, in that answer you gave, you brought up so many interesting points, and I'd like to touch on a couple of them. I'm reading on social media, I mean, everybody had a great time there. Carnival-like atmosphere I'm seeing popping up left and right. We're still under the specter of COVID-19. What kind of precautions, protocol, rules did you guys have in place to make sure fans were safe, teams were safe, officials were safe? What sort of things did you guys do that maybe another race promoter might be able to put into action to keep their people safe?
Well, we were obviously a little bit cautious about whether we should have the race or not. And Oklahoma has been a state that's kind of opened things up, in general pretty good. But we really kind of followed suit with the Chamber of Commerce Festival in town. And we felt like, all right, if they're going to go ahead and have that, then we'll go ahead and have the race. And, we just tried to, tell people to social distance. And I do think they say that the virus is kind of kept in check by the heat. It was 90 degrees plus heat index, and it's tough. People haven't seen each other for a long time. Everybody are friends. So the social distancing gets hard. So we're counting on the heat to kill the virus there. But we promoted to tell people to try to be safe and just kind of try to stay within your family unit at your trailer, at your working. But it's hard not to intermix there. But really everything seemed to be okay. And there wasn't as much shaking of hands as what used to be, and it was an eye-to-eye, acknowledge each other type thing. But you'd flip over and you'd see a few hugs that people were doing. So hopefully all the numbers will stay down in our area and the people heading back home.
Yeah, here's hoping. Another thing you brought up in your comments earlier, and it mirrors what we saw in the Pro Watercross event in Florida on the same weekend. We had Robert Sand as the first half of our doubleheader on the podcast, and he mentioned they had so many classes of boats, almost 24 classes of skis in Florida for this past weekend's Pro Watercross race. You guys have a lot of classes of what you race. Can you just give me a quick rundown of what kind of boats you guys race?
We have the two different boats, the hydroplane and the runabout, and then we basically have two different motors. We have some of the motors are stock where you can't hardly touch them, closed exhaust, and some of them are modified that have an open exhaust. You can do more to the motors. So we normally run about 12 classes, but we ran 20 classes this weekend, and we ran those extra 8 as special events. We had 4 classes of antiques, and then we had the 2 J classes, and then the APBA has another J class. That's a next step from the young kids, and we intermix that into what we call an A1 class. But, it was 20 classes all total. We normally run for a weekend 4 heats per class, but we backed it off to 3 heats per class just to make sure we had enough time to get everybody on the water, because we pretty much had to race between noon and 5 is when we had to race. And some races we've gone to, people start racing at 9 or 10 in the morning, but we like to give a little testing time. And then, of course, Sunday morning we're right in town, so we have to be quiet for the churches. But so having to work in that timeline, we did the 3 heats, and it worked out great.
Well, if you want to see what their boats look like, fans, go to the NBRA's Facebook page. They have a lot of photos there of the drivers and of the boats. You can see what these guys race with. And a great number of these boats, Rick, these are handmade. This isn't something you can just go to a catalog and pick something out, correct?
Yes, they're really all handmade. by just, a few manufacturers around the United States, but some people will make their own, and some of the manufacturers have what they call a kit, where you buy the plans and kind of pieces cut out, and then you can put it together.
Well, I think
so,
it makes it.
There's some guys that like to do that.
Yeah, and it adds a whole new element to it, coming from stock car racing when, this is something that you built with your own two hands. It's not something you bought from somebody. You actually put it together and you built it. So when you go out there and you wreck it, boy, your temper gets a little bit hotter than it might if it was somebody else's boat you were riding, huh?
Exactly, that is.
Before we get into anything else, tell me a little bit about the race format. I mean, coming from the tunnel boats and jet skis, we have rolling starts, we have dock starts, we have modified Le Mans starts. How do you get your races started? Is it a rolling start? Is it a timed start? How do you guys get rolling?
We call it a flying start, and we have a big digital clock that is on either on the shoreline, or in our case, we have a kind of a pier type dock that sticks out, and we put that digital clock there, and it's kind of midway between the turns. We run an oval course, so it's kind of midway between the turns. We fire a signal, and the racers have 2 minutes to get out on the race course. So they're just kind of putzing around about 30 miles an hour, and then with 1 minute left, if you didn't get your motor started, you can't go out. So once that 1 minute starts counting down, we have two buoys that are down the way from the second turn that you have to enter between the two buoys to make a run at the start. And the goal is to hit the starting line at full speed when the clock says 0. Now, if you hit the clock with 1 second left, you're disqualified. And if you're late, everybody else gets a head start.
Right.
So really the big skill of our sport is being able to hit that clock just right and get out of the first turn first, like in motorcycle racing. You see them start, and the guy that gets out of the first turn first has a big advantage. It's kind of the same for us. And then we race 3 laps after that.
And how big is the course you guys race on?
It's normally about 3/4 of a mile to a mile. But here at Grove, it's kind of a short course track. It's 0.65.
Wow.
So I guess it's kind of like is it Darlington that's the short course NASCAR place?
Yeah, right.
Something like that.
Or Bristol, maybe, sure.
Yeah. So, but anyway, then we run 3 laps, and then we do the multiple heats, and then take the overall winners when you combine all the heat points.
Now, which class out of all the classes you raced, which one had the most participants? What was the biggest race?
It is called C-Stock Hydro, and it's really like the largest outboard class in the United States. There's different names for it, but it's the same motor. And in Europe and Japan, it's called OSY 400. And it is run in, again, in Europe. It's run in Japan. In Japan, they have stadiums built where they have little, around the lake, and they have pari-mutuel betting. So they have, it's a big deal there. And we've had a couple of racers that have gone over to Europe and raced the OSY 400. But that same motor is the biggest class in APBA, the biggest class in NBRA, and then again goes to those other areas, countries.
How many boats are in the feature race? Is it everybody that can qualify? Do you only race so many? Are there people going home? How many boats do you put on the water for the feature event?
We normally run 12 boats. Our rules state we can run 12 boats. Now at Grove, it's a little bit tight, so we run 10 boats in the final. So like we had 16 of the C-Stock Hydros this weekend, so we had to have 2 heats of 8, and you had to be in the top 5 then to make the final. And then they ran the final.
If you didn't make the final, you sat and watched, huh?
Exactly.
Wow,
exactly
fantastic.
right.
Good.
And I had to experience that myself. Actually, no, the opposite. I had a class. We had 2 classes that had elimination heats, and I ran in another class that I had a motor problem. My prop got stuck on the prop shaft, and I could not get it off in time to make the final. So I'd ran second place in my elimination heat, but then didn't make the final. So you can have all kinds of little luck stuff like that.
Well, as they say in every type of motorsport, welcome to racing, huh?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Well, if a fan wanted to get into boat racing, this seems like, in what my experience with the tunnel boats, I mean, we have a lot of guys that race tunnel boats now, either the 45s or the F2s, the F1s, that started out at this level, many of them racing up in Michigan, like the Jake Alchemas and some of the guys in Texas. This seems like the place that if you want to get into boat racing and then move up into a tunnel boat, this is where you start. Am I right in saying that?
It is, and we've known a lot of people that have done that, and a lot of people are content and like the kneel down outboards, but some race that a while and decide, hey, I want to go to a tunnel boat or an inboard or something like that. And but it's really good competitive racing, and you can travel all over the country between the NBRA races, the APBA races. I mean, it is from California to Washington to Maine to Florida and everywhere in between.
Well, one of the great things that makes it so popular is it's so affordable compared to other types of racing. I mean, like any type of racing, you can throw as much money into it as you want. But, I mean, let's face it, when you start getting into the $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 range, that makes it a little bit tougher to do. But how much does it cost to put one of these boats together and on the water?
You know, you can buy new, you can probably get into it for under $10,000. Very, very nice brand new equipment. And you can still get a lot of good used equipment for, half to 2/3 of that. So it is, you could get into find a good used rig for $5,000 to $7,000, and that gets you started, and then you can go from there.
Well, and the other nice
and
thing
then
about...
you do.
I'm sorry.
I would say you do have to watch out. Yeah, I'm sorry. You do have to watch out though, because one of the problems we've had is that in our shop, those boats somehow multiply, and before you know it, about 2 or 3 years later, you're looking there's 5 or 6 boats, and you're running multiple classes and all that.
How strange. I wonder how that happens. That's so weird how that happens.
Yeah.
Huh? Well, and the other nice thing about it...
But that is natural evolution. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, the other nice thing about it, too, is you don't need to have a big motor toter to take these boats around. This is something you could throw in the back of a pickup, right?
Oh, exactly. You can... there's every variation of that, and there's people that have put them in the top of their cars and the motor in the trunk, and guys that have a trailer that carries 2 boats and 2 motors. Then you look over and we've got a trailer that carries 6 boats and 8 motors. So it's lots of variation there.
Wow. Well, we've been speaking with Rick Miller from Thunder on Wolf Creek. He's also a member of the NBRA. Rick, I know this is your lunch break, and you've taken a ton of time with this, and I really appreciate you taking the time. The next event for these guys, or the NBRA, is going to be in Clarksville, Arkansas. 4th of July weekend, fans. Get to Clarksville, Arkansas for Lightning on Ludwig. And, Rick, what's your boat number, man, so fans can watch out for you? What's your boat number?
I have a couple different numbers, but it's 3040 and 3050 are the 2 numbers. Then my nephew, Braxton, he runs kind of the same numbers in 3060 also. But we have pretty bright purple and yellow boats, and says, "What's up, Doc?" Racing on it. I'm a dentist. My dad was a dentist, and then my grandfather put Bugs Bunny on the first boat in 1953, and it said "What's up, Doc" on it. So we've kind of kept that tradition going.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So we're now 4th generation of the What's Up, Doc racing team.
Oh, well, that's great. Love the family atmosphere. Love the tradition there. And man, we got to get on the road, and we got to bring our cameras down, because I see some of the GoPro footage your drivers are putting out there. And I'm like, we got to get these guys on TV. So we all got to work together to somehow make you guys even more famous,
Hey, we would love that. And, you'd mentioned about the Facebook page. The other, our website is racenbra.net. So there is some information on that. There are rules. There's the schedule, all kinds of information. Yeah, and then we also have whatsupdocracing.com is our team's website, and then we do have a thunderonwolfcreek.com website all about the boat race. So there's quite a few things that you can get information from about racing, and Clarksville, I'm excited for it. It is a fantastic place to race. And we're running in, talking about the kind of the dual sanctioning bodies, we're running that race with the U.S. Title Series, and they have boats, hydroplanes and runabouts that go over 100 miles an hour, and it's super exciting. So between the two organizations, we had our first race together last year at Clarksville over Labor Day weekend, and so it should be some great racing over that time.
Well, I've said it before. I'll say it again. I'll say it a million times. You always get more done when you work together than when you work apart, and it's good to see that the NBRA and OBRA and all the other series out there are all working together, and it's showing in the results. You're getting tons of boats showing up, and you all are having a great time. And the next race, again, fans, 4th of July weekend in Clarksville, Arkansas. Rick Miller, thank you so much for your time, my friend. Now get back to eating lunch, and we'll be watching for the results online and see how What's Up Doc does in Arkansas.
Thank you so much for having us, and we look forward to getting to race a little bit more this season.
Rick Miller was our guest on the second half of the doubleheader for the Racer H2O podcast this week. We'll wrap things up in 15 seconds.
RacerH2O.com is the place to go to find easy-to-use links to our social media. Watch, read, listen to, and enjoy our content on demand for free on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and RacerH2O.com.
Fans, welcome back to the podcast. Well, this is new for us here at the podcast. We had to make it a doubleheader week, trying to get more information, more interviews from more people and more different types of watercraft racing out there. Again, so many thanks to Robert Sand from Pro Watercross. He came aboard in the first podcast. If you haven't listened to that, he gave a great interview. And again, Rick Miller, great interview in this podcast. We thank him for taking part of his lunch hour and answering our questions and helping you fans come up to speed with some maybe some kind of racing that you haven't looked at, you haven't dealt with, haven't seen. And that's part of the goal of this podcast and Racer H2O in general, is to promote all types of watercraft racing, not just tunnel boats, jet skis, hydroplanes, but all types of racing. And many times it starts at the grassroots level for a lot of our Formula One drivers and hydroplane drivers and jet ski riders, all starting at the club level and moving their way up to a touring series. So we want to give shouts out and expose you fans to as many different types of racing as we can. So make sure you keep checking out our podcast. Subscribe to us on social media, on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. Make sure you do all that too, because we're going to be putting out some new stuff as much as we can during these crazy times with COVID-19. And that brings me to the comment I wanted to bring to you guys this week. You know, racing is coming back. It's where we see it happening in Florida and down south. Good Lord willing, we'll start to see it up here, up north here soon. But, you know, it's tough with so many different state policies, so many conditions, so many colors. Are you red? Are you yellow? Are you green? It's really hard, I'm sure, for a race promoter and, for a race team owner to figure out where you're going to race, for a race promoter, whether they're even going to have a race. So we all have to be patient while we work our way through this, fans. And if you are able, whether you're a fan or whether you're a participant and you're going to go to a race, just let me remind you this, and this is coming from a guy whose wife is a nurse. Safety is paramount in racing. We say that all the time. We hear it in drivers' meetings. We know that it's paramount. But you have to do your part to keep everyone safe. This is just, no pun intended. These are strange waters we're in right now. So this is just really weird. But we all have to do this, whether you're the driver, the crew chief, the spouse, the fan, the family member, the team member, whatever. We all have to work together to maintain a safe environment. That means before the race, during the race, and after the race event. Before the race, don't do anything stupid. Don't go out and not social distance, not wear your mask, don't wash your hands where you might be infecting yourself or risking infection, and then going to the race and during the race, infecting a lot of people. We have to, like Rick said, mention people shaking hands, hugging, all the stuff we're used to doing, because I understand, fans, this is, racing is family oriented. Every time we go to races, we consider so many people that are racers and teammates and fans and officials. They're family members to us. So, of course, we want to give them hugs too. But, God, you just got to be careful. Maybe pump the brakes on that, because you certainly do not want to be the one that gets people sick. And then after the race, in the event that you feel like you might be infected, get help immediately. Quarantine yourself. Do your best to prevent spreading COVID-19. Guys, this sucks. We're all locked up. I know it better than anybody. We've lost a ton of business this year. My colleagues in motorsports have lost a ton of business this year, and we're all trying to get through this. And one way we can help move things along is just follow the rules, whether you like them or not. I don't know anybody that likes rules, but Whether you like them or not, we got to follow them. And the more we follow them and the safer we get, the healthier we get, the faster we'll be back to racing. So, in the meantime, we'll keep doing these podcasts. I hope you're enjoying them, fans. Hey, who do you want to hear from? We've got time. We have lots of gaps in between these events. I mean, obviously, as events pick up, we're going to start bringing you reports from these events and from people that are involved in these events. But in the meantime, who do you want us to talk to? What do you want us to ask them? Every question's on the table, fans. I got no trouble calling anybody. So hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Email us. All the information is at racerh2o.com. All the links are there. Let us know who you want us to talk to. We'll bring them on the show. We'll do our very best. And in the meantime, fans, as always, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We'll see you at the races. Hey, I'm your old pal, Jared, fans. Thanks for listening. This has been the RACER H2O Podcast.